Morning. Welcome back to my channel, Simply Beautiful with Emma. This video is going to look a little bit different. I'm in a slightly different position. I thought I would make myself comfortable, and I'm sort of seated on my little sofa in the salon. Also, I wanted to thank new subscribers. It's brilliant. I've got people subscribing to my channel who I know and who know me, but I've also got some people subscribing to my channel that I don't know, and that's really exciting. So you know, whatever's brought you here, I'm really pleased and I'm grateful that you've subscribed to the channel and you're enjoying what I'm doing. We're up to about 50 subscribers now, something near that, so that's really exciting. The fact that anybody wants to sit and listen to me waffle on, I am very grateful for, so thank you. I probably would do this anyway because it's quite nice having someone to talk to, but it's so nice to know you're out there, so thank you so much. This video, as I say, is going to be a little bit different. I haven't set up my tripod, so it might be a little bit wibbly wobbly, but I'm probably going to film in different places as different things come to mind throughout the day. But this is the video that I talked a little bit about before, about talking about anxiety and depression and mental illness and things, and how it affects me and how it affects my life. And I've been trying to work out why I want to talk about it, and I'm thinking, is it for me or is it for other people? I've got a pretty good handle on how my mental illness affects me, but there are a lot of people out there that either don't have the experience or they don't have the vocabulary because they've not grown up with an awareness of mental illness like I have, and are stuck and might be stuck on their own, going through some kind of mental illness. And I guess just me talking about how it affects me might give them some comfort, might give them a little bit of insight, might, I don't know, if it means anything to anybody, then it's worth doing. So as I say, this might be a bit rambly, might be a bit bitty, and I probably will have to edit lots of bits out. So I think the first thing I want to say is that, you know, I'm quite happy to say that I have mental illness. Now, mental illness to some people makes them think of schizophrenia, people who have psychosis, people who would outwardly, it would be quite clear that they have a mental illness. Most of the time, most people wouldn't know that I had mental illness. I am annoyingly positive most of the time. It irritates people beyond belief sometimes. I'm a big glass half full person, and I try and encourage other people to be like that as well. But the mental illness that I recognise in my own life, for a long time I thought it was just depression, but actually as I've got older, it's I don't know, it's a greater part of it is anxiety, which sometimes can lead on to depression. Doesn't affect it. I guess the only way I can describe it in some ways is a bit like if someone says they're an alcoholic and they will, even when they have sort of conquered their demons, they will always call themselves an alcoholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I am someone who suffers from mental illness. It's always with me. Sometimes it's controlling how I feel. Sometimes I'm controlling it. The main analogy that I use, and I use this one quite a lot if I'm in conversation with people, I don't have diabetes, and obviously I'm no expert on diabetes, but the little bit I know, sometimes you can control your insulin levels, sometimes your medication or your diet controls it, sometimes it gets out of control and will make you poorly, and it takes some time to get those levels back right. I see my mental illness as like that. Sometimes I'm able to control it, I'm able to respond to everything in life in a normal way. Sometimes the smallest thing can make me feel mentally very ill. I think the word anxiety, and there are certain words, anxiety, bipolar, depression, they have become so openly and commonly used now. And I think some people have a perception that they feel like some of us are using it like it's a trend. I don't believe that. I think it's something that is hugely prevalent in a lot of people's lives, and I think it's only been the last decade or so that we've really talked about it. So I don't think it's that people are imagining that they're ill. I think it's just that they're more able to express it. What I would like to do with this video is actually explain how it makes me feel and how it affects what I do physically, because with me, it makes me physically ill in ways that I'm not imagining, in ways that I can't switch off using my rational brain. So I have a very physical response to my anxiety with a capital A. So that's kind of what I want to address a little bit, because I'm pretty bright and I'm reasonably well educated, and if I could think my way out of feeling the way I do sometimes, believe you me, I'm 43 now, I've been aware that my mood runs away with me probably for 35 years and probably beyond. I was a bright kid and I knew that sometimes I was more unhappy than I should be. I did grow up in a household with my dad. It's no secret, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying, my dad suffered from what was then called manic depression. I don't know if I'm right in saying this, that manic depression and bipolar is a different term for it. I might be wrong. Again, I'm not a doctor. But my dad will suffer from something called manic depression, and his journey with that was very tough. It was tough for all of us. It very much coloured our experience of growing up, and it controlled my dad's life and my mum's life to a certain extent. So we were all very aware of mental illness. And those of us in the family have all come away with it, with our own kind of burdens or scars from it. But, you know, that's the reality of it. It's no different than growing up with a family member who has a debilitating physical impairment. If you had a parent or a child that had a disability that meant they weren't as physically able or mentally able as other people, that has a bearing then on your childhood. So I've always had an awareness of mental illness. I'm also from the farming community, and any of you that are out there that are from the farming community, you know that there is a high proportion of families and people in the farming community that do suffer from depression. There is quite a high rate of suicide. Certainly growing up in a rural village like I did, I was aware that people took their own lives through depression in the farming community. So there is an argument that I learned about mental illness and I learned about depression and anxiety. But my personality, I know, is a very positive person. And the way that when I'm not well, I feel is more than a learnt behaviour, because nobody would want to be as low as I feel when I'm poorly. So, you know, I grew up with that experience, and I grew up seeing the mental health system in, you know, Devon, and knowing that, again, it's not a system, you know, that you would choose to be involved with. It's a hard, you know, the people that work in the mental health field, doctors, nurses, you know, those guys are working hard. So that's kind of my awareness of it growing up. But I firmly 150,000% believe that it is something that is genetically passed on, and how you deal with it dictates how it's going to affect your life. I think for my dad, you know, he was born in the 50s, he grew up in the 60s, he became a man in the 70s and a father. You know, the world was not particularly geared up to help you live effectively and all the rest of it with mental illness. You know, there was medication and you know, but it just wasn't the environment that it is now. I was born in the 70s, I grew up in the 80s, I became a mother in the 2000s. My own mum is a very positive and strong person. She did everything she could to help my dad. I learnt a lot from her. I educated myself. I took psychology A-level for really the reason that I could understand myself and my dad and everything about mental illness a little bit more. I cope with it much better, and I engage with the mental health system. You know, I go to my doctor and I ask for help and things. And then my daughter, again, it's not a secret. My daughter is a amazing, amazing young woman. She suffers from anxiety. She has a very stable home. Me and my husband are really happy, and, you know, like any family, ups and downs and all the rest of it. She doesn't have any reason in her life to feel insecure, or her home is very settled. You know, we both work. She's got friendships. She's got everything in her life that would dictate a calm and happy child. And she has had her own struggles with anxiety, which we have done everything we can to help her with. And she is amazing, and she overcomes every time. And she is going to go on to have an amazing life and every success that she wants. And hopefully we've helped her accept that part of her. And, you know, it can make you a really empathetic person. I think people talk to me about things, and, you know, in my job as a therapist, and friends talk to me about things, because I understand how it can feel to be stuck in your head sometimes and not be able to think about things rationally. So there's that. So I do believe, and the reason I was just mentioning my daughter, I think it's genetic. I think she has inherited it from my side of the family. I really do. And I can't help but feel guilty about that. And I know that's an irrational thing. All I can do is try and give her every support. And she is amazing. She is going to take the roof off the world if she wants to. So, you know, I'm hoping that we've done, you know, as much as we can for her. And she's just going to take herself the rest of the way. She's amazing. So that's kind of a bit of a background on it. On a depression perspective, I think growing up, I remember periods of being very unhappy. It's difficult with hindsight though, because as a teenager, and I was the oldest child, so I kind of sought chances to be by myself. So, you know, I don't know, was I a child that isolated themselves? Was I just an older sister to two little boys and wanted to be by myself more? I don't know. So I do remember periods of being very unhappy as a child, but obviously growing up with a parent with an illness, you know, that feeds into that. The first time as an adult that I really, really can say that I was in my darkest place was ironically after I had my daughter. And being a mum and having a baby was really, I mean, you know, I've worked hard and, you know, I did well in my career before I changed careers, and when I had my daughter. After I had her, there were lots of things. Nothing drastic went wrong, but the whole birth experience I found personally so traumatic. And I don't use the word traumatic lightly, you know. It was the most terrifying and painful and frightening experience of my life. And that's, oh my God, I could talk about childbirth and all that forever and a day. That's a different story. Anyway, after I had her, I was very depressed. And that feeling of depression is a feeling of hopelessness and darkness and feeling like the world would be better off without you. This is my experience. Again, I'm not trying to prescribe any feelings to anybody, but that was my experience. I don't want to go into like massive amounts of detail about depression because, again, you know, my family, you know, they deserve their privacy as well. And obviously it's a very personal thing when you're going through periods. And I would never, ever, ever want my daughter to carry any burden that she thought she caused me anything other than sheer happiness. My body and my brain responded to the experience of childbirth in a way that made me very depressed afterwards. And I remember some of the overwhelming feelings of that were of feeling like a failure and feeling like I was no good and I was worthless as a person and as a mother. And that I wasn't used to. I'm always someone who's I've always worked really hard, and I thrive on praise. I hate being told off. I hate being in trouble. And this is all going to lead into when I talk about my anxiety. I don't think, my mum would be able to confirm, just move my arm. I was never one of those children that wanted attention at all costs. Getting told off was the end of the world to me. Hated it. And actually my daughter's like that. The only attention I like is good attention, positive attention and praise and being told that I'm doing the right thing. And, you know, I'd always done well at jobs, and particularly before I had my daughter, in the run up to having her, I was a rep, sales rep, and I loved it. And I was traveling all over the country and earning a lot of money. And the harder I worked and the better I did, the more money I got paid. My boss would say, well done, and you would get prizes. So I had quantifiable praise and affirmation, my arm's getting tired, for achieving well in my job. That was what I needed, and that was a positive thing for me. I think once I became a mum, and emotionally and physically, I just lost every ounce of confidence in myself. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly worthless and a true failure, and that I was no good as a parent, and I was going to be no good as a parent or a wife again. And that was a very hard time. And what really helped me with that was eventually my dear husband, who bore with me through it all. And all I could say to him, I remember saying to him, I'm coming back. I will come back from this. You know, I've not gone. This is something. And I think Ella was about 8 months old. And I think I remember him saying to me something like, you're still in, change position so I can use my different arm. He sort of said to me, you're still in that delivery suite. You're still in that operating theatre where I had my daughter. And he said, you know, you need someone to help you. How you're feeling? And actually, when I'd gone back, we were in and out of hospital for quite a while after Ella was born for various reasons. And I remember one of the nurses looking at me and seeing that I was in a lot of distress, over and above worrying about Ella because she was a bit poorly. And she gave me a number for the counsellor at the maternity hospital. And she said, you know, if you ever need help, then ring her. And I felt a bit of a fraud even thinking about ringing her, because I thought, well, there's somebody who's a counsellor at the maternity hospital. That's going to be for poor women and fathers and mothers that have lost children, that, you know, have really been through a quantifiable, horrific experience. But I just wasn't getting any better, and I wasn't smiling. I wasn't, you know, and my daughter was very, very wee. She was only a few months old, and so there was nobody to say, Mum, you know, what's the matter? Cheer up. So I think I just stayed in this very, you know, dark place, doing everything I needed to for her. You know, the house was kept tidy. My daughter was impeccably dressed and clean and fed, because I was so scared of letting her down and proving and being this worthless person that I thought I was. Anyway, eventually I went and had counselling at Wanford, and she was amazing. And she really helped. And again, if anybody wants to know specifically in relation to childbirth how this woman helped me and with her counselling, then I can do that in another video. But I don't want to go into that too much, because really I want to talk about now and ongoing and stuff. But that was a very dark period. There have been recurrent periods. About the middle of November, it tends to occur with the nights drawing in. I start to feel a bit low. And the first few years after I had Ella, I really would struggle, and I would feel very despairing and hopeless. as these dark nights drew in. And I think it all goes back to the fact that my daughter was born in December, and it was very short days, very long nights. And it was sort of bringing back that feeling that I had. And actually the first year, I could say hand on heart that I only realised that I hadn't felt bad in that period, sort of clocks changing, was the first year we had my crazy, ridiculous dog, who causes me no manner of stresses and strains because he's loopy. But because I was out walking him, and I think getting more daylight around that time, I'm a big believer in daylight and how it can help. That year, so kind of 3 years ago nearly, I had a much better period. So I would say generally that I am someone who suffers from depression, but I am not someone whose life is affected by depression very much these days. Somehow or other, whether it's I'm self-employed, I try and control my life as much as possible to not allow myself to get into that spiral. Depression isn't a big factor in my life. It's ever present. But really now the problem and the issue that I have is anxiety, and it is a very, very different kettle of fish, physically, emotionally and everything. And that's really what I want to talk about more, because that is what's going on now and what will affect me continuing on. So I've been talking for 20 minutes now. So I'm going to have a little break. I'm going to do some work, go gather my thoughts about what I've been talking about, and then I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about what has happened now, and more about the physical aspect of anxiety, and why I am absolutely 100% convinced that it affects you as much as any physical impairment could. So I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Again, done the morning in the salon, and I've gone home for lunch. Toast and jam and a glass of milk. I have the palate of a 2-year-old. And I actually showed my daughter what I recorded that's come just before. Because while this is my story and my truth, if you use a YouTube phrase, it's important that she's comfortable with what I'm saying, both about her, but also that she understands what I'm talking about when it comes to me. I wouldn't want to put anything out there that she's not aware of, or that makes her uncomfortable or frightened or anything. So she's happy. It's just her mother doing what her mother does. So I talked this morning primarily about kind of growing up with an awareness of mental illness, and then struggles I had after I had my daughter. So I could talk about depression and what I know about it and what I feel about it for hours. I mean, I'm quite happy to make more videos and talk about things more, or certain aspects of it. So if you want me to address different aspects, or you want me to look into things and talk about other things, then just let me know. I'm always keen to hear from you guys what you want to hear. But really I want to talk about anxiety with a capital A. And this is all my opinion, my take on it, my feelings about it. Again, haven't got my tripod, so. I am someone who I like to work hard. I like to push myself. And I am not adverse to a bit of stress. I think sometimes a bit of stress, a bit of urgency in the day is a very good thing. There is a big difference between me being stressed or me being worried and suffering from a spell of anxiety. Things have happened in my life, like everyone else in the world. Some things have happened to me that have been bearable. Some things have happened to me and people I love that have felt almost unbearable. And strangely enough, when I'm well, there's nothing that I can't cope with. And normally I am the one who keeps things together. Certainly in the past, in my family, there has been things that have happened that have seemed like, you know, the world stops turning. But I've managed to keep things together, and normally that positive side of my nature just takes over, and I crack on and roll up my sleeves and get in there and do what I can for everybody. And it's genuine, and I can do it, and I can feel comfortable, and I like being that person who is bringing comfort to other people. Anxiety is something different to being worried or frightened or sad or scared. And for me, in my situation, anxiety normally comes from a trigger. And my biggest trigger is guilt. Actual guilt or emotionally created feelings of guilt. So if I think I've done something to physically or emotionally hurt someone, if I think there is something happening in my life which I have not taken care of. So financial things worry me a lot. But a lot of that is guilt. You know, if I miss a credit card payment simply because I've just missed the date, on an ordinary day, oh, that's fine. I'll make the payment. I'll make a double payment. You know, it's fine. It's one of those things. It's a number on a machine. No one cares. I've made the payment. It's my fault. Idiot. If I'm very tired or overstressed, or it's just the day's got a Y in it, getting that text or that letter from the bank or the credit card company to say, oh, by the way, you've missed a payment, could you please catch up, could send me into a state of panic and anxiety. Sometimes it takes accumulation of things. So something could have happened, and I felt a little twinge of guilt, but then I've slept on it, I've dealt with it, I've kind of relaxed into it a little bit, and I've started to feel, okay, it's all right, you know, it's fine, there's nothing I can't sort out. I'm somebody who never knowingly hurt anybody if my life depended on it. But say I've managed to cope with that, and then a little thing occurs that also makes me feel guilty. That is enough then to trigger off the anxiety reaction. And the anxiety reaction it's as quick as a guillotine coming down, or a curtain falling at the theatre, or, you know, the hammer falling. I go from being the ordinary person, the person who laughs and cries and eats and talks and everything else, to a shell of myself. I physically, immediately, it feels like the lift has fallen. Okay, so I'm in a lift and someone's just cut the rope, and it feels like I'm falling. I feel cold, like a feeling of coldness starts at my head and goes all the way down to my feet, and then sometimes a feeling of heat seems to come back up. It's a very visceral physical reaction. I immediately, hang on, I'll get my arm comfy. See why I use a tripod? I immediately physically lose my appetite. I could be halfway through a mouthful of food, and if something happens to send me into a guilt fueled anxiety spell, it feels like I've got a mouthful of gravel and feathers. If I've got a mouthful of food, I find it very difficult to even finish it if that feeling overtakes me. And this eating is one of the things that underlines to me how very real anxiety is. I put a little thing on Facebook a couple of days ago. I'm really busy in the salon. I'm too busy to get out because someone put a Twix through the window. Because I'm a big girl. I like to eat. I enjoy food. I like to have a snack. I like to know when the next meal's coming from. When I am ill with anxiety, I frequently will go 48, 72 hours. I could go 3 days without eating, and usually without drinking. And I will not feel in any way affected by it. I won't feel hungry. I won't have hunger pangs. I won't have a gripey tummy. I won't feel dizzy or faint. Physically, emotionally, I'm feeling like the world's closing in on me, but physically I feel fine. Now you tell me that that's not something real and tangible. How can my body go from getting hangry, you know, hungry and angry, if haven't had my tea by 7 o'clock, to going 3 days without eating or drinking and not keeling over from it? I can only presume, I don't know, is it adrenaline? Is it the state of panic and anxiety that I'm in that fuels my body? I seem to recover from that stage quicker these days. I remember one Christmas years ago, I wasn't well with anxiety. And I remember Christmas Day, I was seeing family that I hadn't seen for a little while. And I remember dressing in baggy clothes because I didn't want them to see how much weight I'd lost. I mean, I'm never going to get skinny, blimey. I'm a size 20. You know, I've got a bit of padding on me, but I didn't really want people to know how ill I was, and I covered my frame up because I had lost so much weight. And it can take me a while to recover from that. So even when I'm starting to feel better emotionally, I almost have to build my appetite back up. And I think that's probably only natural. If people for any reason don't eat for a length of time, you know, your tummy shrinks as such. So yeah, there's the immediate feeling of falling. There's the hot and cold. My heart normally races quite quickly. Either that or my heart seems to slow down and I can feel the thud in my chest. I start, sometimes I'll flap, which sounds ridiculous, but I will flap. It drives everybody I know mad, but I tap my knees a lot. And I tend to do that more when I'm anxious. My body's just on the move the whole time. But when I'm in the grip of anxiety, I can sit in one position. I could sit there 24 hours and not move. Because I'm frightened to move in case I make the situation worse. I don't speak. Some people, my daughter, when she's anxious, seeks reassurance constantly. And that's one of the things that she is so good at now. She's really learned to control that. But I won't speak because I think subconsciously my fear is if I talk about these things that I'm feeling guilty about, even though in my brain I know that I'm being irrational, if I say them, it makes them real. If I say I've missed a credit card payment and I think the people at the credit card company think I'm a bad parent and I think they're going to ring social services and I think they're going to come and take my daughter away, which is what my brain is telling me, believe it or not. Even though I know that's not true, my intellectual brain, I still can't tell anybody what I'm worried about, because what if somebody ever said to me, well, that's a distinct possibility. That's the irrationality feeding on itself. Right. Need to sort my thoughts out because I'm kind of talking about, this is a bit of a stream of consciousness, this video. So I'm talking about how I feel. I've got some of the physical things out the way. I'm going to, again, stop, go and do some work, have a little think, and then I'm going to come back and carry on. So probably be a different location. See you in a bit. Okay, so it's now Bank Holiday Monday, and it's been, I think it's been a couple of days since I last filmed. I've had a blooming headache ever since I started recording this, and I think it's because I'm overthinking what I'm going to say. So I'm just going to plough on today. So in the last video I talked about, oh, excuse the face, no makeup, no nothing, but Bank Holiday Monday, I'm at home. So in the last video I talked about the physical sensations, so lack of appetite and hot and cold, and you know, those, you know, how physically, you know, I feel controlled when I'm in a state of anxiety. Emotionally, I am a talker, as most people have realised by now, so I tend to use, I can almost use like word pictures to describe it a little bit more. So one way that I feel when I'm in the grip of anxiety is a little bit like I have no skin, as in like I'm so
I'm like a nerve. I feel like a nerve that's exposed. So every word, every nuance, every thought just hurts. So it just feels like I don't have any protection from the world. So a noise makes me jump. A word makes me panic. So I don't feel like I've got that kind of protection from the world. Also, how else can I describe it? Like, my brain is jumping to the worst, most hideous conclusion possible about everything. So whatever it was, that last little thing to tip me over into a state of anxiety, that whatever that feeling of guilt, or, you know, that pushed me into it, I'm in the grip of kind of like absolute terror. Now, I'm lucky. I've never been as frightened in real life, shall I say, of something real and tangible. So I've never been in fear for my life. I've never been in fear for someone else's life, you know. I've been through lots of things like most people, but I've never been as genuinely scared of something in my life as I feel when I'm in the grip of anxiety. I am so scared. I am too scared to speak. I'm too scared to move. I'm too scared to think. If I can, I don't really drink these days, but to be honest, when I did drink, you know, I would take the edge off sometimes, that fear. I would always, you know, have 2 or 3 glasses of wine, and that might help me sleep when I'm in anxiety, but I don't really drink these days. But you're just, I feel like a tuning fork. So everything, every noise, every nuance, the phone rings, say my phone rings, and I don't really like to pick up my phone when I will for work, because I can go into autopilot. That's the weird thing with work, whether it's because I love my job, I love my clients. It's very rare that I've been so anxious I can't work, and I can't explain it. I don't know why. I can't function well at home. I can't function with my friends. I disappear. My best friend, bless her, she didn't really have much insight into mental illness and certainly anxiety, but she really, bless her, she's taken it on board over the years, and she's kind of educated herself, and she can see it coming now. And when I go off the radar for it's usually about a week, and I don't message, I don't respond to messages, and then eventually I'll pop up. I normally turn up on the doorstep and say I'm feeling better, and she'll say, oh, okay, I thought it was coming, and you know, I gave you your space. So bless her, I love her to death, and she's kind of, she understands now that it's not that I don't want to talk to her, it's that I can't talk to anybody, but I can still work and function. So I think, although occasionally it might be an interaction with a client where if I've been feeling a little stressed, too stressed, and some interaction with a client that may have been less than perfect, because life is like that sometimes, maybe that might even have pushed me into my anxiety, I still can go into the salon, switch on the lights, and I can work. In between my clients, I may well turn the lights out, lay on the bed under a fleece and try and sleep, or watch something mindless on Netflix and switch off. That seems to help, and that's probably why I moved into a salon space of my own, getting on for a year ago, and while I miss my friends that I work with very much, I have found for my own mental health it's much better working in my own space, because I enjoy my interaction with my clients, but then whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, I really value and make the most of that downtime in between clients, whether on days I'm really proactive and I'm doing marketing stuff and social media stuff and all the rest of it all. If I'm not feeling brilliant, I can just turn the salon lights out, lay on my massage bed wrapped up in a fleece and watch a bit of Netflix and just turn my brain off, or try and turn my brain off from my anxiety, and that can help. So yeah, for my mental health, it's definitely been better working by myself. As much as it was lovely having my colleagues checking in with me when they could tell I was struggling. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, it's terror and fear and stomach clenching terror of everything, and the worst case scenario is that I'm going to end up in prison, or we're going to lose everything we've got, house, any money, they'll take my daughter away. I mean, it's really kind of, it's irrational terror and fear. Not terror and fear that something's going to happen to me, because to be honest, I don't know whether it's a parent thing, but I don't care in that way. It doesn't make me scared. It's like, if I thought I was really poorly, I mean, I have various low-grade ailments like most people, but if I thought there was anything really poorly with me, I wouldn't be terrified. I would, you know, I'd be wanting to find out what was going on and stuff. When I'm in anxiety and I'm terrified, it's more for my loved ones, that something's going to happen than it's been my fault. So yeah, it's a tough thing to go through, but touch wood, I always know I'm going to come out of it. And it takes, to be honest, as I get older, and whether it's because I've got a better handle on things or what, or whether because I work on my own now, I can sit in my own head and let it work its way through a little bit more. 3-4 days used to be 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and I would be very poorly. So the periods are definitely getting less. I do take medication, so I want to make that very clear. I take citalopram, which I think is a very common medication for people with anxiety and depression. Suits me just fine. I take a fairly low dose, but then I have that low dose in my system, and if things are tough, then my doctor's great, and I'll give him a ring and we might up my dose. So in that way, I hate the fact that I have anxiety. I really hate the fact that genetically I've inherited it from my dad, and I think probably he inherited it from his mother, and you can go back through history as far as you like. But the main thing I hate is that my daughter has inherited it from me. That's what I really hate about it. But hopefully, you know, each generation we handle it better, and the generation before has been educated in it. And, you know, what I learnt from watching my dad, I've applied to myself, and then I've applied to my daughter, and hopefully, you know, her life will be more successful than I've managed to make mine, and so on and so forth. But there is a part of having this sort of low grade, I would say low grade mental illness, because, you know, there are people out there whose lives are completely controlled and destroyed by mental illness, and I would not wish to degrade in any way their experience by saying that, oh, I can cope with mine, and I'm you know, I'm at one with it. I'm just lucky. I'm lucky that I am the person I am, and I come from the mum that I have, and I've got the vocabulary and everything else to understand that I can't make this go away, but I can cope with it. But it does make you, you know, sometimes you've got to work with what you've got, and it has made me a very empathetic person, a very sympathetic person. I'm very open, although when I'm in a state of anxiety, I literally clam up. You know, I'd rather not talk to anybody for days. I'm obviously very verbal, and I'm very open the rest of the time. And so I'm very happy to talk to people, and people feel they can talk to me about all sorts of things, good and bad. And I think having any form of mental illness or an experience with other physical disabilities and ailments, I think if you take that knowledge on board and you're happy to talk about it, I think there's always someone else that gains from it. And so that really helps me. That really helps me think, well, you know, this is what the burden that I carry, and if I can help anyone else along the way feel like they understand a bit more about what they're going through, then so much the better. I mean, and there are other people who suffer from social anxiety. I've not got social anxiety. I can go anywhere, talk to anybody. You know, I've stood up in front of 500 people and spoken. I can stand up in front of 5 people and speak. That's a confidence that I've got, and I'm lucky I've got it, and I've used it in work and social things. so I don't have social anxiety. I just, you know, I have this switch within me that when it gets, you know, turned on, I'm just in for a bad time for a while. I think I've probably explained enough now. I could just witter on for hours, but hopefully I've given you enough insight into the intensity of how anxiety can make you feel. The fact that in my case, it tends to blow itself out and diminish, and rational thinking gradually noses its way back in after a few days. Usually with the doctor, I always remember them saying that if you are in a worryingly low mood or a heightened state of anxiety for over 2 weeks, then you need to seek help. So please, any of you out there who don't recognise or have been diagnosed with anxiety or depression, please talk to your doctor, please talk to a friend, please talk to anybody, because you're not alone. There is so much help there, but you have to go and find it. You have to educate yourself, unfortunately, as well. I am a big advocate of medication. I rattle when I walk. I have, as I say, I have various sort of low-grade medical issues. You know, I've got arthritis, I've got very bad eczema. Nothing, you know, glamorous or attractive in any way, shape or form, but it all requires medication, and I happily take as much as they can recommend to me, because, you know, I want to control the symptoms. Not everybody is up for medication. It's up to you. I find it takes the edge off my anxiety, and it takes off the bottom sort of end of a low mood that can overtake me. So I get on very well with medication. So I think I'll draw a close here. There's probably lots of things that I've forgotten. There's other things that you might be interested in asking me about. Please, in the comments below, share anything you want to share. You can ask to contact me privately if you wish. You can contact me through my email, which is mail@simplybeautifulwithemma, if you want to talk to me about anything privately. But please, just if you can, talk. And the best thing to do is talk when you're feeling well. Because if you're anything like me, once you're in the grip of a spell of anxiety, you're not going to feel like talking then. So talk to somebody when you're well. So thank you for watching this. I've got lots of makeup and product video plans in my head. I'm happy to talk about other subjects as well. I just want this channel to be a channel where women feel comfortable, you know. So tell me what you want to hear. Do you want to hear some more personal things? Do you want me to look into some more issues for you? Or do we just want a bit of glam and a bit of escapism with some makeup? Let's have a bit of everything, shall we? That's life all over. So thank you for watching. If you've found this video at all valuable, then please subscribe down below. You can press the little notification bell as well, and that will just let you know when I've uploaded a new video. So thanks for watching through this with me, and I'll see you all soon.